These are the 50 things I wish I knew before I started buying aggressively. Number 1. Buying fragrances will be addictive. Before I started collecting, I had no idea that I was going to be collecting. Once buying fragrances has become a kind of like habit for you, then it's bound to be addictive, and when you're not spending time checking out fragrances, watching reviews, life would weirdly feel lesser. So it will be addictive whether you like it or not. At the start, I thought that I was going to need only 30 bottles so that I would just use one perfume for every day of the month, but that didn't turn out to be true. Number 2, your standards are bound to get higher, and there's nothing that you can do about that. Once you've tried, say, for instance, your own Perfume or something by Xerjoff, a universally loved perfume like Naxos, once you've experienced perfumery of a very high order, anything else that you buy will be measured against those. To a certain extent, you might feel like you're accumulating a lot of things that you really aren't going to need or that you won't really love. Standards getting higher happens in every part of life, whether we're talking about cars or real estate or even, even the quality of friends, the people you hang out with. Once you've experienced great people, you don't really want to keep hanging out with the ones that aren't as great.
So I told my boss I'm not staying in that stupid toy factory.
Number 3, Fragrantica exists. Yes, there was a time when I didn't know that Fragrantica exists. Just in case you don't know it yet, Fragrantica is this awesome global website that devotes one page to nearly every perfume that has ever been released, and on every page people can add their reviews. On top of that, there are also numerous articles about perfumery. One cool thing about Fragrantica is that it's very easy to email other users. Like for instance, if you have a follow-up question on a certain perfume, or if you need some help about checking the legitimacy of a certain bottle that you're eyeing or that you've just purchased, you can in fact email other users, and most of the time people are very willing to respond. Number 4, Fragrantica scores are imperfectly reliable. I suppose the rule of thumb about everything is that you just have to take it with a grain of salt. There are 2 bottles that I bought before that had such massively high scores, like 4.20 or something like that, and they turned out to be not as wonderful as the Fragrantica score might say. If anything, what the score indicates in Fragrantica is that a certain perfume can compel somebody to actually take the trouble to vote. So take the scores merely as a guide. And as for the positive reviews there, when you come across an extremely positive review in Fragrantica, it's always a wise move to check out the profile of the person who wrote that extremely positive review. If his or her top 5 fragrances don't exactly agree with your taste, then maybe it's best not to listen to that person. Number 5, joining a Facebook group really helps, especially if that Facebook group is based in your particular locality. Sometimes members can help check the legitimacy of a certain seller, and they are also extremely excellent gray marketplaces. There are numerous niche bottles that I was able to get only because somebody was already letting it go. And of course, I got those bottles below retail price. Number 6, prices don't reflect authenticity. Careful where you buy. At the very start, I was scammed. I bought a bottle of perfume from somebody who claimed that the goods that he was selling were authentic. It turns out that they're not. They're fixed. There's one of those things called Dubai testers where there are typographical errors on the box and the scent just lasts for maybe like 5 minutes. That store is Perfume Hub, and I in fact reported him to the Department of Trade and Industry. Nothing really came out of it. Make sure that you're buying from the right sources and don't base this idea of authenticity on how much the products are. Scammers can price those things really high as well. Number 7, for some perfumes, you actually need to spray them once and then leave them alone for like maybe 4 months for you to get the kind of performance that that perfume is known for. I remember the first time I tried Horizon by Guy Laroche. At the very start, the performance wasn't really good. But after 3 months, it started to get better. I started to get better longevity on it, and it's now one of my favorite perfumes. Number 8, spend the most on daily use practicals. Why? Because they're the ones that you will spend most of your time with. If you go to the office, then go for a niche thing or a really wonderful, perfect designer scent for the office, because what's the use really of having the best perfumes that you only use like once a year? It doesn't make sense. This kind of goes down to why we put on perfume in the first place. Isn't it because we want to have a richer daily experience? So if you're putting on perfume because you want the daily life to be better, then don't be afraid to spend the most on the best daily use perfume that money can buy. Number 9, there's a good perfume at every price point. This almost came to me as a surprise because the first ultra cheapie that I bought was Jaguar Classic, which turned out to be more synthetic than I really could care for. But later on, I discovered things like Roberto Capucci Him and Salvador Dali Laguna, not to mention that classic Grey Flannel by Jeffrey Bean. Those are incredibly cheap, but at the same time, the quality is really way up. So, at every price point, whether you're talking about something below $20, something in the $100 range, the $400 range, there's something great at it. And also, at every price range, there's also something horrible. Number 10, anosmia happens. What is anosmia? Anosmia is when the perfume is in fact doing its thing, but you're not able to perceive it. This sometimes happens to me when the perfume is ISO-E super heavy, like Terre d'Hermès, Eau de Toilette. After 3 hours, I'm not exactly able to perceive it anymore, but the people around me are telling me that they can definitely smell Terre d'Hermès on me. One of the things that I'm experimenting on recently is just spraying on my forearms and the back of my neck. Why? Because I think that if I spray it in this area, I keep inhaling it every time that at some point my nose just kind of like shuts down on the scent because it's not a new sensation anymore. I'll let you know what the results of the experiment are later on if I'm able to perceive fragrances longer if I spray only on my forearms and the back of my neck. Number 11, if collecting massively, 10 ml is okay. This came to me as a shock. Once I had 130 full bottles, I realized that if you have that many and you in fact want to keep using them, it becomes very difficult. Like I've had 10 ml of Your Tobaccolor for half a year now, and I've just used it twice. So, if you're going to be collecting massively, like let's say if you want to get your hands on maybe 500 different kinds of perfume, really After 100 full bottles of perfume, you don't need more. And I'm not really sure if I can if I can practice what I'm preaching now. I hope to, because it's starting to feel ridiculous. I'm not using my collection as much as I really want to. It's not like I'm feeling like I wasted my money, only that I'm not collecting to display a ton of bottles behind me when I'm doing this channel, or even for my life. It's not for the display. That's just not what it's about for me. I'm collecting perfume because I am just really crazy about experiencing new scents, new ideas in perfumery. I actually want to really use my collection. I'm never gonna collect like 3,000 bottles. What the hell am I gonna do with that? Even if I had all the money in the world, I'm not gonna get that many because really, it's going to be so impossible to use. Again, I'm sorry to be so reiterative, but at 130 bottles, I'm not using them as often as I could. So from this point forward, and I hope that I could practice what I'm preaching here, I think I'm just gonna go for the smallest bottle that there is. Will I in fact be able to follow that? I am really not sure. But I think it's a wise way to go. After 100 bottles, 10 ml of something is okay. And besides, if you love it so much, then get the full bottle. Number 12, reformulation has killed many great fragrances. Now, I was born in the very late 70s, and so when Cool Water was released, I was 10 years old. That was 1988. And I got my first bottle of it in 1991. Cool Water by Davidoff is certainly a groundbreaking perfume. It changed the game. After Cool Water, every designer house had to produce something that was a blue aquatic fragrance. It was great in 1991, but when I got my second bottle, about maybe 1998, it was already something else. Reformulation has ruined it, and after that 1998 bottle, I was never again interested in getting another one because really, they've changed it. It's not the same thing anymore, and it has turned into a waste of money. This reformulation problem happens to so many perfumes. It's the reason why at this point, I'm not even sure that I really want to get L'Artisan Parfumeur's Timbuktu because many people have said that it's nothing like the earlier formulation. And recently in Fragrantica, the perfumer Miguel Matos, who happens to be an editor in Fragrantica, said that Dior Poison is so different from what it used to be that they might as well just kill the fragrance entirely. Number 13, if you love a fragrance, if it's a 10 out of 10, go get a backup bottle of it before reformulation ruins it. Also, you never know, discontinuation can happen, so if you truly love a fragrance, get at least one backup bottle. Number 14, season and environment can affect your perception and judgment of a perfume. Some perfumes, for instance, they need dry air for them to shine. This was my experience with Chanel No. 19. I first tried it one rainy night a year ago, and it turns out that Chanel No. 19 simply doesn't work when the weather is too humid. I almost sold it off. Thank goodness I didn't sell it off because apparently in summer Chanel No. 19 is so very great. It's one of my favorites to wear. So before you get rid of a perfume, do make sure that you've spent some time on it. Number 14 brings us directly to number 15, which is 1 year on the fence on a perfume is doable. Sometimes we can really be too hasty with judgment, and I'm saying that 1 year on the fence is okay. Well, why 1 year? Try it during every season. See where it really works for you. If after every season imaginable it's still not working for you, then maybe that's the time to dispose it. Otherwise, keep giving it a chance. Now, before I proceed to number 16, please subscribe if you haven't. And do hit that like button. Number 16. YouTubers are professional collectors. Don't compare your collection with theirs. You're the normal one. The people on YouTube, thousands of bottles, that's not really normal. And like I said before, it's impossible to use all of those bottles. Number 17, whatever you can't buy now, you can buy later. If you can't buy a fragrance right now, there's absolutely no reason in the world to feel bad if you can't buy a fragrance yet. It only means that it will have to be sometime in the future. Number 18, nobody needs more than 2 rose oud fragrances. Thus that combination, rose and oud, it's so common. If you have 2, really, you don't need more than 2. Number 19, don't base any purchase on top notes. Top notes aren't really designed to last. If you're interested in a fragrance primarily because of some interesting note that they put at the top, really, that note is going to disappear within 15 minutes. Maybe some of it will remain for a bit, but really, it's not the main star of the fragrance. And in fact, putting attractive top notes has been used by perfume houses to get more buyers. It appeals to our impulse to buy. Anytime you can, do test a fragrance for an entire day. See how it feels on you. See which notes last. And after 8 hours, you would be able to know if it's a fragrance that is really worth your money. Number 20, don't blind buy anything whose base notes are musk, wood, and amber. That trio is so generic, and more often than not, you will be disappointed. I'm not saying don't buy some fragrance like that. All I'm saying is don't blind buy it, because sometimes they might have the musk, wood, amber trio in the base, but some perfumers are really great. They know how to make it more interesting, but more often than not, seriously, if the base notes are musk, wood, and amber, usually it's just going to smell generic. It's something that you've certainly smelled before, and it's not going to be special. Number 21, grab, if you can, any vintage discontinued perfume that comes your way. Why? Because nothing really will ever bring those things back. And as far as disposing them is concerned, they're so much easier to sell off, and usually even at a higher price. So if something comes your way, do grab it. New releases are very easy to get. They'll be around for at least 2 more years or so. But those vintage discontinued ones, most of the time, they're never coming back. Number 22, when buying decants, get 5 ml at minimum. I made the mistake of buying 2 mLs of some Nichane decants, and 2 mLs just didn't do the job. I was able to get an idea of what the perfume is like, but I didn't really get to experience them. However, when I got 5 mLs, I was able to get a much better sense of whether I like a perfume or not. So when buying decants, minimum 5 ml. Between a linear and a non-linear fragrance, go for the non-linear one. Trust me, the experience is just so much better. Not that the linear ones are bad. Like for instance, I think of 1 Million Lucky by Paco Rabanne. I think it's a wonderful clubbing / Christmas winter fragrance, but after a while, because it's so linear, it does get boring after an hour. That's a very different experience from when a fragrance is non-linear, like say Xerjoff Naxos. That's non-linear. It changes throughout its life, and that wearing experience is so much better, and really, it's really worth the price. Not that non-linear fragrances are more expensive, no. If a fragrance is linear, usually if you go to Fragrantica, there will be somebody there mentioning that it is. Number 24, the more polarizing a scent is, the more interesting it is. One of my turn-ons when I go to Fragrantica and read the reviews is, I love it when somebody finds a scent disgusting while somebody else finds it like a masterpiece. Those scents turn out to be the really unique ones, because only a fragrance that is unique was bold enough to actually do something different. And of course, when somebody does something different, it's bound to get mixed reviews. So strong mixed reviews are usually an indication that a fragrance is going to be interesting and worth your trouble checking out. Number 25, when blind buying, it's best to go by the perfumer. If you already know the perfumers that you like, then blind buying another fragrance that was created by them isn't going to be such a dangerous activity. Like for instance, I really do love Jean-Claude Elena, and I think anything by him is really a lesson. Not that I'm getting all of them because they're watercolors, and sometimes like what he did for Frederic Malle, L'Eau d'Hiver, I'm pretty sure that it's a beautiful perfume, but for that price I would want better performance, and that's the only reason I haven't quite spent on it. But if it's a question of whether I like it or not, and if it's a safe blind buy, if the scent profile alone is what matters, then I'm so definitely sure that it is. Of course, the inverse is true. At some point, you're gonna find out that some perfumers just never seem to make perfumes that do the job for you, and so needless to say, you know what to never blind buy. Number 26, the full presentation doesn't really matter. Until like just a year ago, practically all of the perfumes that I got were, designer stuff, and so they never came in elaborate coffins. And those coffins, in fact, apparently take up a lot of space, and even the boxes do. I mean, I'm not usually somebody who would throw away boxes, but if there's a chance to get the same perfume bottle with the cap, without the box or the elaborate coffin or coffret, I think is what some of them are called. If there's a chance to get them, do get them, because really the packaging, if you're the kind of person, if you're a rat pack and you don't really like throwing away stuff, they will take up space and you will develop a problem storing them. Those things are going to produce a storage problem. So if there's a chance to get something without the big box, do go for it. However, number 27, do pay that little extra for the cap. We all love to say that it's just the juice that matters, but really a bottle without a cap, if you can get one, it's just like $4 more. I say go for it. Go for the bottle with the cap. Number 28, between cheap and rare, go for the rare. The rare will always appreciate in value, and give it enough time, in all likelihood, its price is bound to increase. Number 29, test fragrances that are marketed to the opposite sex. Like there are many fragrances where the women's version is in fact more interesting. Like for instance, Dolce & Gabbana's Light Blue. The for women of light blue is really much better than the one for men. And I've seen people who say that cool water for women is actually very good for men too. So don't let the genderized marketing of perfume limit the number of fragrances that you can try for yourself. Number 30, make a well-researched wish list and stick to it. What do I mean by a well-researched wish list? Don't put anything that catches your fancy into your wish list. Only put in that well-researched wish list those perfumes that you already know you're going to get. And those that are just slightly interesting, don't put them in that same wish list. Why is it important to put it? Because it's so easy when you're doing your shopping to be distracted by so many other different offerings. Keeping a wish list is like blinders, as with horses, so you know exactly which ones that you're getting. Wish lists will give you the focus that you need so that you don't have to waste so much money on impulse buying, especially the cheap ones. Another thing that I would suggest that you do is for you to order the items on that wish list according to how much you want to get them. So the ones that you don't like so much, put them at the bottom. The ones that you really think that you need, put them at the very top, and prioritize those. Number 32, don't buy anything just because it's cheap. My problem with cheapies is that at the end of the day, I don't really use them much, because I really want my daily life to be more special than it usually is, I end up reaching for the more expensive perfumes anyway, and the cheapies, they almost never get used. So eventually, they're starting to feel like they're just a waste of money. There are, of course, cheapies that we love, which means that we got them because we love them, not because they're cheap. Some might say that sometimes, like when you're shopping and you're trying to reach that minimum for free shipping, that, it's not what's so bad about getting a cheapie just to get the free shipping. In those instances, I would say that, no, never mind. Don't get something because it's cheap. Get something more expensive. Go beyond what you were planning to spend. Because more often than not, what you're really doing is that you're preventing yourself from getting the more expensive bottle that you could in fact get anyway. So just why not go for it? Number 33, redundancies will happen. That's something that I didn't expect at all, but it turns out to be true. Why? Because the real innovation in perfumery really happens when a new aroma chemical gets produced by chemical engineers. That's when something groundbreaking truly happens. In fact, if we look at the history of perfumery, remember how aldehydes, a new invention in the 1930s or 1940s, was it? It's when aldehydes got produced by chemical engineers that Chanel No. 5 came into being. So that's where the innovation is. And as long as there are no new aroma chemicals, perfumers will have access only to the same aroma chemicals. And those things, those perfumes, those produced using the same library of aroma chemicals are bound to produce redundancies. Number 34, groundbreaking perfumes are few and far between. In the designer world, if something becomes a huge hit, all the other designer houses are going to do their version of that same thing. Number 35, there's nothing wrong with dupes. About a year ago, I was honestly looking down on dupes, but it turns out that there's no reason to look down on them. And it doesn't really make sense to me why, if a designer house tries to copy a perfume done by another house, it's not really called a dupe? Really? And when you think about it, think of all those releases from designers that feature oud. I mean, aren't those trying to copy some Middle Eastern perfumes that were released way before those perfumes were? So, dupes have always been part of the history of perfumery, and there's nothing wrong with them. I think the only thing that could be wrong with them is when the bottle is designed in such a way that it just doesn't really speak to you, or it's something that you're not really happy to see in your wardrobe. I suppose that's the only reason to not get a dupe. But otherwise, I don't know. I think I was really, really wrong in being an OG snob before. Number 36. It is in fact possible to prefer the dupe over the OG. This in fact is the reason why I never got Amouage's interlude, the so-called Blue Beast, because, well, the OG Amouage interlude isn't exactly a perfect fragrance to me based on my skin, because after 4 hours I wasn't really sure whether I really enjoyed the experience or not. So I went for what they say is a dupe, Swiss Arabian's Shagaf Oud Abyad, which I kind of really like. It doesn't have the opening of the Amouage interlude that I'm in love with, which probably means that I will eventually get the original in time, but it's not really a priority. When I do, it's very clear to me that I'm just getting it for the blast of oregano, which is impossible to experience in the dupe. Number 37, the word niche does not mean great. As far as I'm concerned, the word niche means a perfume house that doesn't have as much capital as the bigger houses. Because when you think about it, they employ the same noses that the designer houses do. And so the only real difference to me is that the niche houses don't have as great a system of distribution, and they don't have as much capital to produce as many. And if you think that something is going to be great just because it's from a niche house, really do think again. Number 38, Niche certainly does not mean better performance. For instance, this great perfume by Carner Barcelona called Tardes, I love it to death, but you would think that for the price that it goes for, it would perform better, that longevity is going to be stellar, but it's not. I suppose in that case, the money just really went to the beautiful composition of Tardes. But again, if you think that just because you're spending much more on a niche fragrance that is going to give you better performance, I hate to say it, but that's not true. Number 39. There is a niche brand and there is a niche scent, and those things are not the same. Niche means that it will appeal only to a particular segment of the market. Now, niche houses, for instance, like Parfum de Marly, they have Layton, which as far as I know appeals to everybody anyway. So it's a niche house, but it's not a niche scent. They're very different. Now, think of Gucci Guilty Absolute. Now, that's released by obviously a designer house, but the scent itself is different. It's unique. In fact, I think it's groundbreaking, even though some people say that it does smell like, I think, Dark Lord by Kilian. And it also has resemblance to something else, which was done also by Alberto Morillas. But anyway, the point is that if we are strict about the definition of niche, which is that it's appealing only to a segment of the market, then a niche scent can certainly come from a designer house. Number 40, I just have to say it. Outside Europe, Musc Ravageur by Frederic Malle really sucks. It's too powdery. It's just shockingly powdery, and the spices in it. I love clove as much as the next person, and that's not my problem with it. My problem with it is just the very thick, powdery experience that Musc Ravageur is. To be fair, I think if I lived in Europe, I think that I would like it. If I lived in that climate, I think it would work really fine. But outside Europe, I just don't think that it works, and I think it just really sucks. I wish I knew that before I started collecting massively, because I bothered to get 10 ml of it. I say that I wish I knew that Musc Ravageur sucks before I started buying aggressively, because for such a long time the name was just so beautiful to me. I was practically a victim of its marketing. Musc Ravageur. What a beautiful name for a perfume. And when I finally got my hands on 10 ml of it, I really hate it. I think it's terrible. It's not sexy. Number 41. YouTube channel subs and views are not an indication of the quality of content. The performance of YouTube channels really is just a matter of how you play with the algorithm. So the more views you get, the more views you will get. In YouTube, more views leads to more views, leading to more views. So the algorithm of YouTube just favors those videos that are performing very well at the very start. Just because a video has 1 million views doesn't mean that you're really gonna learn much from it, because it's just a game of algorithms, and that's just how it is. Number 42. I wish I knew at the very start that you could alter the playback speed of any YouTube video, because many YouTubers, they tend to take 10 minutes to say something that could be sent in 3 minutes. And you might ask, so why are they going for 10 minutes? Because 10 minutes is more optimal as far as earning from ad placements is concerned. That is at least what the statistics say. So if you're wondering, so why is that video 10 minutes? It's because of that. It's part of how YouTubers make income. Number 43, some YouTubers are in fact paid to promote fragrance brands. One of the indications of that is that they would praise a perfume in a certain video devoted to a brand, but if you notice, those perfumes never get into their lists of top 10s. Now, I'm not judging the practice. Everybody needs to make a living. However, I do end up trusting those who never accept paid promotions. And that's just how it works. If you're delivering content that is influenced by how much you're getting out of it, you're bound to lose the trust of some of your viewers. Of course, I do appreciate knowing more about the brand, but I think it's just so much better if, I mean, I love those content creators who are just upfront about it, and if they got the bottle for free, they would just say that they did. Basically, it's the people who are really honest and who have strong opinions that they stand by that I still love watching. Number 44, the only list to take seriously in YouTube is the top 10 for life. When somebody's doing a list of like top 10 freshies or top 10 for fall, those really mostly are just suggestions. But if there's one list that you have every reason to take seriously, it's when a content creator produces a list of top 10 for life, or maybe top 20 for life. Because if it's for life, then that's as strong a recommendation as it could get. Number 45, find the YouTuber whose taste is similar to yours. Now, I'm not saying that those whose tastes are different from mine are people that I've stopped watching. I still watch their videos, but when it comes to purchasing bottles, I know pretty much by now who the YouTubers are whose tastes are like mine. How did I know whose tastes are similar to mine? I blind bought the ones that they highly recommend, and the ones that coincided with my taste are the ones that still influence me when I'm buying a new perfume. Number 46, never take the results of polls seriously. Really, they're just as meaningful as every election, which means not really. I would trust the creator, I would trust the channel owner, but I'm not gonna trust the results of polls and those top lists based on surveys. The results of polls aren't really trustworthy because the methodology of getting the results isn't really all that. I mean, you know, if somebody's 1 million subscribers did vote, then maybe that might be something. But if it's just a fraction, usually it's just the die-hard fans of Aventus that will bother to vote. I am so much more likely to trust the creator of the content rather than his or her subscribers, because at least that content creator bothered to smell all the different fragrances that are being considered. In polls, there would be people who smelled maybe just 2 out of maybe 5 being considered, and those people would vote. So in terms of methodology, the results of polls just aren't going to produce very meaningful results. In other words, don't take them seriously. Number 47, there are hundreds and hundreds of perfumes that are just as good as the perfumes that are getting hyped. And that's a good thing, because if you're into this as a hobby, then it means that you have an entire life to discover those wonderful perfumes. Number 48, just being practical, prices in discounters fluctuate. Tom of Finland by decants used to cost something like 6,000 5 months ago, and just last night I checked, it's just at 4,000. We're talking pesos. So they fluctuate. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. So as far as the fluctuation of prices is concerned, the best thing to do perhaps is to know for sure what the standard retail price of a fragrance is, you know, if you're already getting a good deal or not. Number 49, keep track of everything you're spending on perfume. Why? Because at some point, if you discover that the money that you spent on fragrances could have bought you a house, in that case, maybe you have to reconsider your priorities. But then, of course, it's your money. You do with it what you want. And last, number 50, always appreciate what you already have. Whether your collection is 10 bottles or if it's 150 bottles, appreciate them. Don't keep looking for the next perfume that you have to get. Like, whatever you have, wear them, love them, and also keep the bottles in good shape. You know how those things can attract thumb marks all the time. Spend a little time wiping and cleaning those bottles, just so that you can always feel that what you've got is pretty damn good. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you again.